Hi, everyone. This is the Cloak and Dagger weekly briefing with Albert Marko and myself, Tony Nash. We're going to talk today particularly about the U.S. regaining centrality in geopolitics. We've been hearing for years about how the U.S. position is eroding, how the U.S. Economy is eroding, how China's taking over, how all these things are happening, right? But what we've seen, and we'll go over this in a few topics, the US is actually right in the middle of a lot of key geopolitical discussions. And in fact, the US has been called in to mediate some of these discussions, right? So let's first take the Israel-Palestine conflict. If the US hadn't gone involved and bombed Iran and gotten involved in the peace, there would be no end to that, right? Albert, what do you think about that? I mean, let's just start there, right? I mean, the US has always been involved there, but I think there has been a heightened level of involvement there this time around.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard these, ridiculous narratives of the U.S. falling back and
Yep.
isolationism and anti-interventionism. It's just
Yep.
it's comical and it's really silly of some people to, continue on, that those arguments. I mean, you look at what's going on in the world, whether it be Israel, whether it be Ukraine, whether it
Yep.
be South America, China, so on and so
South
forth.
China, whatever,
Everywhere,
Africa,
no
whatever.
matter where you go, no matter where you go, the U.S. has some sort of like hand in the pot over there. It's just
Yeah.
there's no other nation that can globally play this game, right? Whether
Nation
it's
or group of nations. I mean,
or
I want to
even
be
group of
clear.
nations.
You and I are not rah-rah America guys necessarily. Of course, personally, we have our views, but in terms of our geopolitical analysis, we'll take an arm's length view on things. But I've tried to get around it. Like, how is the US not deeply involved in these geopolitical issues? It's hard to find one where the US isn't involved, right? Can we name an
But
area where the US isn't involved?
no, that's the trouble. Like it's like you look at Iran. Where was Russia? Where was China? Right? Because that's
Right.
really who we're really talking about here. Like Russia and
Yeah.
China versus the United States. Because
And the
Europe is not.
EU kind of,
Oh,
but not really.
the EU is whatever. I mean, they can sit there
Right.
and talk, but they're nobodies, right? So you have the China Russia axis versus the United States. Dragon Bear, Vilena's Dragon Bear thing versus the United States. Iran absent, right?
Yeah.
Venezuela absent. Serbia absent, right?
Yeah.
Iraq absent.
Right.
Like what? Like at what point? At what point do these anti-American, anti-imperialism people want to like wake up and say, "Well, when are they going to stop the United States? When
Even
are?"
with India, Pakistan, right? I mean, India, Pakistan, China, they put $50 billion into Pakistan, right? They would have some say in this, but even India, Pakistan is something where China hasn't gotten involved, right?
No.
And Pakistan now is starting to fight against the Taliban, which is really US bidding more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's always these little like these skirmishes that go on globally, and people will say, "Oh, the United States isn't there," blah blah blah. Like, yeah, well, you say that, but they are because it's their weapons, it's their money, their geopolitical influence, and so on, right? Yeah, the Turks have tried to do things on their own, right? But they're very limited. I mean, hats off to them because they've entered the
Yeah,
African area, and they've been doing well to expand their influence. But even that's extremely limited. They don't have a military force that can
right.
go in there and defend certain nations and allies. The Russians can't even take over Ukraine, let alone go to Venezuela and help Maduro stay there. Right? I
Right.
mean, even Xi comes out and says, we support Maduro. Those are words. You know,
Well, yeah, for Venezuela, there's something like $60 billion or $40 billion of debt that Venezuelans owe to China that they've been taking out in oil, but there's nothing, China has no recourse whatsoever. They can't go in and seize Venezuelan assets, right?
No,
And when you
but
go
even
back,
then, but it's really like stopping the United States from regime change, stopping the
yeah,
United States from like attacking the Iranian nuclear facilities. None of that has happened. Not
right,
not even an instance of it. They'll send
right,
over an advisor or a diplomat or a couple bullets here and there, but there's no people on the ground. There's
yeah,
no there's no anti aircraft missiles being sent over there or
right.
Russian warships. or
Right.
Chinese military. None of that's happening.
Yeah. And going back to Africa, we've had Russian presence in Africa for a long time. 15 years ago, we had the Qataris try to do some investments and have presence there. Then we had Emiratis, and now we have Turks. And it's like they all have money and they all have influence in certain parts of the world, but they just can't execute, right? That's the real problem is the Russians and the Americans are really the only ones who can execute in Africa, and the Russians are less powerful than they have been in the past.
Yeah, you need a military. You can
Yep.
give people loans all day long, but if
Yep.
you can't go collect it or you can't protect those investments, what are they there for? What are you
Yep.
doing at that point?
Yep. So I want to go into kind of a grand plan, a big geopolitical grand plan, and we wrote about this week, and it's talking about it's interweaving the Russia-Ukraine discussion with the Venezuela discussion, and sometimes we put things on the site just to test a hypothesis, right?
Of
So
course.
I'm just going to lay out what we wrote and let's just talk about it. We basically said, okay, Russia, Ukraine have been fighting for a long time. It's not Trump's war. It was Biden's war. Trump's wanted to resolve it. Ukraine is not a strategic interest of the United States, aside from being kind of harassing Russia.
Yeah, true.
Venezuela is a strategic kind of objective for the US, especially when you look at the hemispheric influence and the crude, which is well tuned for Gulf Coast refineries, right? So because China, Russia have had influence in Venezuela, I'll just say, how plausible is it that part of this Russia-Ukraine deal is also a side discussion getting the Russians to release their influence over Venezuela, or at least not protest U.S. growing influence in Venezuela? And the example that we talked about is the U.S. pushed a Russian vessel, kept a Russian vessel from docking in Venezuela this week, right? And the Russians didn't protest it. Nobody, previously that would have been a big issue. So, how plausible is it that there are kind of those trade-offs being made so the U.S. can have more Western Hemisphere influence as they let loose kind of their Ukrainian
Well, I mean, obviously,
interests?
if you're negotiating, of course, you're going to put all the cards on the, you're going to play
Yeah,
whatever card you can, and Venezuela being one of them. I would do the same exact thing. I mean, it's
yeah,
plausible. You certainly want some sort of resolution to the Venezuelan issue without guns being fired.
yeah,
And that would certainly be a point of discussion. So, quid pro quo is like, we let
yeah,
off of, Ukraine, let off of Venezuela, because
right.
the main objective of the U.S. Taking down Venezuela, I've said for years, is combating the Chinese influence,
Yep,
right? The oil and the food, right? And the
yep,
food that's there. The IRGC, the Iranians make unbelievable amounts of money on illicit arms, illicit drugs, illicit oil, everything through there. They're all over the country, right?
right,
That should have been dealt 20 years ago. I just don't understand why
right.
it's taken this long. I don't want to even get into that. Anyone that's known me has known that I've talked about this for about 15 years,
Yep.
right? So it's a needed thing. But going back to your, Venezuela, Ukraine thing, yeah, of course it's possible. I mean, I would be making those same arguments before bullets start flying.
Yeah, and none of this is to say that Ukraine isn't, a valuable place and that they're not great people. Like everyone loves Ukraine, it's great, but
We
you
don't
have
make
to
those.
look at interests. You
Yeah,
have to look at interests.
we don't look. I'm not. You and I don't look at the humanity component of it or the moral clauses or anything like that. We're just saying that if I was the United States and Venezuela and Ukraine over here, I'm doing what's best for the United States,
Yep,
right?
that's right.
And that's just the way. That's just the way the world works.
Right.
Whether you like it or not, it's just the way it works.
Well, and we saw, okay, last year, Tucker Carlson sat with Vladimir Putin, and Putin lectured him on the history between Russia and Ukraine for 45 minutes. And Tucker, not my favorite person, looked like an idiot while Putin was lecturing him, right? He didn't even know about Kiev and Rus. He didn't know the history of, the Soviet Union taking Ukraine, all this other stuff, or at least he didn't act like it. And a lot of Westerners looking at this don't understand that history. Honestly, I don't care. Okay, you can go back to any place. You can go back 50 years, you can go back 500 years, and there's always an argument to be made over whose land is whose, right? So I think as Americans, it's really, is it our interest? I'm not really sure. But when we look at the two, Venezuela is much more of a core interest than Ukraine.
Oh, absolutely. Venezuela is without question. I mean, Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's a clown, right?
Yeah.
I don't listen to that guy. I don't think I've listened to him in like 20 years. I don't really care, right? What
I
he has
mean,
to
but this
say.
past week, he told us that the dollar was dying.
He's stupid. I mean, just I didn't even want to like get into this. Is like talking about the Tucker talking about dollar dying. Shut up, dude.
Right.
Go write your
Exactly.
books. Go sell your
We
books.
know who he's been talking to. We won't name
Yeah,
names, but we know
yeah,
who he's been talking to.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So just
yeah.
going back to the centrality issue, with the China-Japan disagreement over Japan's PM saying that they would kind of intervene if China circled Taiwan, that's really kicked up, and we've written about that a couple times over the past couple weeks. Now, they've both come to the US to get involved, which is really telling to me. It tells me, first of all, that they see the US as kind of the only one who can settle it. It also tells me that neither one really wants to fight over this. They just want to talk over it. What does it tell
Well,
you?
yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, listen, the Japanese Navy, as I've maintained for years, is a very formidable Navy,
Yep,
right? The Chinese are deathly afraid of the Japanese Navy. Don't
yep.
make no mistake about that,
They will
right?
never say that.
So well, they don't have to say it. I mean, just say it. We'll say it. I'll say it, right? So
Yep,
you're talking, Japan making these moves is at the behest of the United States again. The United
yep.
States being involved, right? The Chinese objecting, of course, they're going to say, A, B, and C against Japan because that's their audience in Asia. They have these face saving culture, right? They can't look weak, right? Certainly can't look weak. So, but for them, the reality is they have to call Washington to resolve this before things get out of hand. Rhetoric wise,
Yep. Okay, so let me talk about one last well, not one last thing, but let me talk about one more thing with geopolitical risk premiums for oil. Okay,
No,
if we have a Russia-Ukraine settlement, what does that do for oil price going into the end of the year?
drop it significantly. There's no question about that. I mean, there's a lot of Russian oils off the market or sanctioned, and it's really about the efficiencies of the oil trade, right? That's what this Russian sanctions are really hurting. If Ukraine and if Russia got off the sanctioned oil list because of the Ukraine peace agreements, the oil would certainly be going down, right?
Yep.
Certainly.
India, China want Russia off of those lists because they buy a lot of the oil.
Mhm.
Europe actually wants Russia off of those lists because that's where they get their energy.
Of
So more people than we want to believe want Russia off of those lists. They want their way politically, the Europeans, but they don't want to pay a cost. So, it helps kind of everyone but Ukraine if Russia is off of those lists.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Like the Europeans, they're unserious and unrealistic players in this whole game, right? Especially in the Ukraine, where the United States came up with a peace outline, basically, where they give up part of their land to Russia and so on and so forth for whatever security guarantees. And then the Europeans feeling left out and being stupid as they are, they're like, no, we're zero land and they have to stop and we can't do this and they have to do that. It's like, come on, guys. Like you're not even a major player in the game here. So why are you even opening your mouth? You're trying to look tough now because we both know that you really want that Russian oil, that real cheap
Yeah.
Russian oil to keep flowing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to talk, I guess, last a little bit about AI. And we've seen the shine come off of some of the AI plays over the last month or so. And that obviously affects US equities. It affects US GDP because a lot of the GDP for the last quarter has been from data center and AI investment. It also affects China because a lot of the China equity movement and investment and other things is from AI. So, what's your view on kind of the AI premium that companies have gotten, let's say, over the last 2 years, and how sustainable is that?
Um, it's really tough, right? Because the whole AI narrative and rally for it is really based on the US saying that AI is a national security issue, right? A lot of these contracts that you see between Google and Nvidia and OpenAI and Microsoft and like a whole like merry-go-round within each other of like investing money that's I don't even know how real it is, right? I mean, do I think AI is overvalued? Oh God, yeah. By multiples,
Be
right?
hard to find someone to give a rational argument that some of these companies aren't, right?
Yeah, but the reality is, the government's supporting it, right? The government is pumping this stuff into the stratosphere, right? Part of it is because, is it national security? Yeah, of course. I mean, the Chinese are trying to make, headlines and, pathways into breaking into the AI game and trying to be leaders in that. Obviously, they don't have the chips.
Right.
And the United States uses, the Mag 8 to pump the markets for political
Right.
optics. So it's a two-headed, it's a double-headed eagle, or
That
two-way
sounds very
sword,
Russian.
or Albanian.
Yeah, sorry.
So I mean, it's just how do you fight betting against AI and tech companies when the government isn't fully supportive of it and making these ludicrous things that like, oh, we can't let the Chinese win. We need to pump up the market and pump up tech, another 40%. So you can't bet against it.
Yep. Yeah, it's really hard. And we did write a piece about the U.S. exporting or NVIDIA exporting H200s to China, and how really that's kind of a non-starter. It would, they're having to piece together a lot of other chips to be able to do what an H200 does, and it's like something like 6 times the energy consumption what China has to do with the chips now. So that's on the website for anybody who's interested.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about the power, the power needed for generating all these data centers from coming online. I mean, nobody wants to talk about that in the media right now.
Yeah, it's awkward. It's really awkward.
Mm.
Everyone wants to cheer it, but then, they don't want to look at the energy prices. So, so we'll see what happens. As I've said for a while, I think we're going to see a slowdown and a pullback on some of these data center announcements.
Oh, for sure.
It's going to be quiet.
Yeah.
The pullback will be quiet, but it's going to happen. And, if nothing else, some of these are bottlenecks in manufacturing some of this equipment. So, one last thing before we go. I know I said AI would be the last thing. Here's the last thing. Hassett at the Fed. Okay, so we're going into December. I know it's hard not to laugh, right? We're going to December. Fed cuts likely. Hassett is being viewed as the next Fed chair. What are your thoughts?
I think he is going to be the next Fed chair because he's just a great ass kisser. I mean, he's a social climbing chameleon, and that's all he's been for his entire career. So of course he's going to be the Fed chair. I mean, they don't want someone that's going to, talk sense into Bissant and Trump about, monetary supply and inflation. They just want a yes man, and they're going to get their yes man, and most likely it's Hassett.
Yep. And so what does that mean? So we have a mix of Democrats and Republicans on the Fed, and they roll off they're not all the same term, but they roll off from time to time. So what does that mean for the makeup of the voting members of the Fed? I mean, is it kind of the majority is in line with Trump now, so he's going to get what he wants?
I mean, it's slowly turning into the majority, but only because they fake inflation and industrial and manufacturing numbers right now. But there's only so long that you can fake that, right? So as long as those numbers come in cool-ish, right, and not really hot, yeah, they'll vote in Trump's.
Not only do we fake it, Albert, we just don't publish it.
No,
We just say because of the shutdown,
no,
we're not going to
no,
publish it.
because listen, they know these numbers well in advance,
Of course.
right? And when you're looking at these numbers, like, oh, we can't publish this. Let's have a government shutdown.
Blame
Sorry
it
if
on
you
the
lost the
shutdown.
data. Can
Oh man,
never
there's going to
get
be
it.
another one in January, so we won't be able to publish data
Can
then
never
too.
get it. I mean, this is like, I mean, we laugh, but it's really a devastating thing for trust in the American system.
Is there
Uh,
really trust? I mean, come on. Really?
I mean,
Do we really trust BLS data or
no,
census
they
data?
should
I'm
just drop the
sure.
L and just say
Right,
BS.
exactly. Like, it's just, I mean, in data science, there's like a naive last or a naive algorithm that you can put in when you just want to generate a random number, right? And so
Yeah.
I always joke with people that these are just kind of naive algorithms that they put for this stuff, and then they revise it into something that's sensible. And I believe that's what happens is the first release is for PR, and then by the time you get around to the third revision, it actually shows. But nobody
Yeah,
cares by the time
exactly.
it's the
Nobody
third.
cares at that time. No,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
trade's gone.
All right, so what else do we have? We're headed into December. What else are you looking at in markets? Let's look at gold for a second. Is gold kind of in a range for now, or are we going to see it go
I
up
think
to?
so. I think so. I
Yeah.
think I think it's in a range. I do believe it's probably going to test 3,200 again, right?
Okay.
So
Next
I
year.
do think, yeah, next year. I think it'll
Okay.
test 3,200 again. And
Okay.
into the markets, I mean, honestly, I'm really looking at small caps probably rallying hard into next year because I just think that they want to rally this after a little bit of a drop down in Q1. I think they want to rally this market and make sure some people get paid off.
Yeah.
Whether it be their buddies like
Yeah.
Lennar and which is ridiculous. I don't know if you've seen my tweets about that, but some clown obviously tied to somebody in the Trump administration or in the government put in a massive call option order for Lennar. And it's just gone vertical. And I'm just like, come on, guys. I mean, this is just so brazenly stupid to do. You're making $2.6 billion in like a week and like nobody's gonna notice. Of course people are gonna notice at some point.
Yep.
You know?
They will.
And this is one of my biggest complaints about the Trump administration. It's like, you campaign on, we're going to get rid of all the corruption and the grift and this and
Oh,
that. And you've done like 50x on what you said. It's unbelievable.
they're all corrupt, Albert. It's just the form that it takes. They're
I
all
know.
corrupt.
I wish we had that clip of like that meme, like corruption is bad unless I'm involved. And I defend it. Have you seen that one? Oh, I gotta send it to you. It's amazing. Some African politician. It's great.
Unless I'm involved. Okay, so let me throw something at you. Tell me if I'm even on target. With the shutdown, we had pent up money going into the economy for 8 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So we now have all that spend going in now, plus the normal spend. So we have 8 weeks plus 6 weeks of spend going in over the last 6 weeks of the calendar year. So it seems to me we're having a ton of money dumped into the economy before December 31st.
Santa rally, man. Santa rally.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
They need to get that Santa. They love to have the markets rally before Thanksgiving and rally before Christmas because they know that people's families are together. They know people talk and it's politically advantageous.
Right.
Look at the market today. What it hit like 68.50.
Yeah.
On what? On what? What are we rallying on?
Yeah.
So, maybe they're rallying on the fact that Michigan is going to beat Ohio State, and it's just such a great
I would love to see that
indicator.
happen. Honestly, I'd love to see that happen. So I'm not going to talk too much about A&M Texas, but where my heart is. As an A&M fan, I worry about every single game.
Is this what it is?
Oh, that's right. That's right. Orange down. That's right. Exactly. So Friday, thoughts and prayers, all that stuff. So,
right.
But yeah, it's Michigan's year again. So, and it's the last week of regular season of college football, which has me a little bit sad. So
rivalry week, Auburn, Alabama,
that's right.
No one gives a shit bowl. Mississippi, Ole Miss in Mississippi, nobody gives a shit bowl.
Yeah. That's right. All right. Hey, thanks very much, Albert. Have a great weekend.
All right.
And we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks. Yep. Bye.